Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively charged Doctor Who podcast in which I, Z-list Doctor Who bore Toby Hadoke, get a special guest to choose a story for me and to nominate their favourite things about it, and I have to guess what those favourite things are. Welcome. We're still in lockdown. We're still in cold storage. I have an ice-cold, non-alcoholic lager. Ice-cold because I brought it from a chill centre that seemed to be run by a load of Nazis whose parents all liked classic film criticism. And with that in mind, let's try to watch a story that has been... So now, this is curious because, in fact, what I'll do is I think I'll get my guest, who I haven't spoken to yet, who's told me the story via email, and I'm now going to go forward in time and speak to them because they want to do this as a two-way chat rather than them doing a monologue to camera. So I'm going to speak to my special guest who actually worked on the show, worked on these episodes unusually, to tell us why this is the one that he has chosen. So I'm going to go forward in time to a bit that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, so I am Andrew Cartmel. For my sins, I script edited Doctor Who. I did all of the Sylvester stuff, all of the Seventh Doctor. So I did 3 years of Who, and it was fantastic. And there is going to be a Blu-ray release of a box set of season 24. So I, because I'm being interviewed for some of these, I rewatched season 24, except for Time with Rani, but that's another story. And I was very struck by Dragonfire. I was surprisingly pleased with Dragonfire, Paradise Towers, and Delta and the Bannermen, because they were early works, if you know what I mean. I was just getting started, just finding my way forward. But I was surprised, really, at how much I enjoyed all of them, especially Dragonfire, and especially because of the quality of writing of Ian Briggs.
So, thank you, me from the future. I hope I was well. And thank you to Andrew, who's given us his reason. So, unusually for this, what I'll do is I'll watch the episode and I will nominate my thing. And I'm going to watch all the story through and nominate my things. And then tomorrow, I'm going to do a chat with my special guest, and they're going to tell me. So there's no way I can cheat. I mean, I haven't been cheating, and I wouldn't cheat. But you can be rest assured, because there's no way I know what my special guest will choose, because I don't even have the raw footage, which will be captured via Zoom in the next day or so. So with that in mind, I'm flying totally blind, apart from to know that my special guest, Andrew Cartmel, wants me to watch a story he worked on, Dragonfire, and I have the DVD in. So in whatever medium you're watching it, please press play now. See, I actually moved my Blu-ray player to make it easier for me, but I'm still pointing at where it used to be. It's a Blu-ray, yes, and DVD player. This is on DVD. The title sequence is looking gorgeous. Obviously, this is the title sequence. I was alive when this was on. This is I watched these episodes go out as broadcast, and it was terribly exciting. Although I haven't seen Dragonfire for quite a long time, I'll have to be honest. This is a season I've not revisited a lot and have struggled with in the past. But this was... I had a really soft spot for Paradise Towers, and I will explain why when we do that. But this was the voted the best story of the season. This was certainly the one which was felt to be sort of more like traditional Doctor Who. And this is I really like this opening. I was thrilled that Tony Osoba was back, although I hadn't really realised that he'd been Lan in Destiny of the Daleks. I knew him as an actor in other things. He was Chaz in Dempsey and Makepeace, and he was in Porridge, and he cropped up in Bergerac. And this is Sean Blowers, who at around this time he looked like an actor that you knew from things. and I don't think he did, but almost at exactly the same time, he did London's Burning and became a regular, and I think the head of the fire department in London. London's Burning was a hugely popular show. So it seemed like they got him sort of early or concurrently or so. And one of the other extras in the queue of mercenaries is Ray Knight. Now, the reason Ray Knight is important, he's the bald red-headed one there. The reason Ray Knight is important is because he actually was the head of the extras agency. I love the guns. I love that because they actually fire a thing. That's a really neat effect. That's a really neat effect because it suggests sort of laser bullets. And I don't know how they did that. It looks really cool. But yeah, Ray Knight was the head of the Ray Knight Extras Agency. He was the barman in Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which meant he occasionally got a credit, but he was a non-speaking character. But I discovered later he also supplied a lot of the extras. So clearly, if he fancied a job as well, he went, "Yeah, I've got the 6 extras you want. There's Jim, John, and there's one that looks and sounds a bit like me." So not a big part for Sean Blowers, although he makes a decent account of himself, and that's really chilling. Quite literally, but that's a great way to introduce the villain and his thing, what he does, which is freeze people to death with his hands and then put his gloves back on. I love Edward Peel in this, and that's a nice model shot of the planet. I like. So yeah, this seemed more like what Doctor Who should be trying to do to me at the time, So I have to say, setting it in a freezer centre is not sort of what I recall when I think of this being the one that was doing what Doctor Who should have been doing, which is being scary and having aliens and having villains who are a bit like Nazis. I believe Kane was originally called Hess, wasn't he? But the name was changed. The incarcerated war criminal Rudolf Hess was somehow offended. I don't know. And now this is interest. This is where I wonder how I'll take this. As I say, I haven't seen this for a long time. I was delighted Glitz was back. I'd loved Glitz in Trial of a Time Lord, and was very pleased when he came back at the end of that. And so was thrilled when he returned for this. It gives a nice bit of continuity with the previous season. Tony Selby had done an absolutely fantastic job, and he's got a lot of charisma, a lot of roguish charm, great costume, great zizzy space sideburns. I always was rather sad that he never brought Dibber back. Dibber, played by Glenn Murphy, who was at around this time in London's Burning with Sean Blowers. London's Burning was a big show at the time as well. So it's largely forgotten now, but it was hugely successful. And I was delighted Patricia Quinn was in it because I'd got into the Rocky Horror Show, which was quite a risque thing to be into when I was, whatever age I was, 1987 this was, so I was 13. And the Rocky Horror Show was about as naughty as it got, but also it had lovely music, and it was a horror pastiche, and it was a sort of culty thing, and we somehow got hold of the video, and we got a record of it as well, not sung by the original cast, some weird Rocky Horror sing-along thing, not a sing-along, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But Patricia Quinn was Magenta, so again, when she was announced as being in Doctor Who, that was very it's quite an eccentric performance she gives, because you think of Magenta in Rocky Horror, and she's a bit, and you go, oh, she's giving it sort of Transylvanian. Oh no, she plays everything like that. And I think she's quite a character. She was married to Sir Robert Stevens, who was in The Box of Delights with Patrick Troughton, who was Aragorn in the BBC's radio's Lord of the Rings. So she had all sorts of reasons why she was an exciting reason to be in Doctor Who. And she's flanked by Stuart Organ and Stephanie Fairman. Stuart Organ was in everything at around this time as well. He was Harry Cross's son in Brookside, and I don't know if he joined Grange Hill at this time or was just about to. But again, he seemed, whoever his agent was, he was popping up everywhere. Although him and Stephanie Fairman don't have any lines in this episode, I don't think. They're a bit like, there's a couple of characters in Delta and the Bannermen who were in it who get a credit in episodes 1 and 2, but one of them doesn't say a line, and turns up in this as the creature, Leslie Meadows, and one of them has one line, and you do sort of go, for a show that has to be budget conscious, you're paying some actors full whack to hang around not saying stuff. They're both Tony Asoba's also turned up more recently in Kill the Moon, so he's one of those that has been in classic Who and old Who, and I've been to his house, and he's had a really interesting career. Edward Peel knows how to play a Doctor Who villain. I love the way that in the space canteen, I don't know how I feel about the fact that this is trying to be, in the mind's eye of its creators, this was, why don't we do the Star Wars cantina in Doctor Who? And between that brilliant idea and the budget and the design department, I haven't really noticed the fruit shapes adorning the back of the bar, because it's a program that has to be suitable for children. It's a bar that serves milkshakes, and I was never sure about that as a child. I thought at least do some space booze, call it a Pangalactic Gargle Blaster or whatever. But milkshake, you're not going to ape the Star Wars cantina doing selling milkshake. Although it does mean that everyone gets to go to sort of town, dressing the extras in the back with costumes that presumably have previously been in other episodes of Doctor Who and Blake 7 and things. I do like the look of the villains. The white costumes work because of the ice, of course. But there's also the sort of Nazi stormtrooper thing going on. It's interesting how we always, there is the sort of Nazi iconography, that great Mitchell and Webb sketch. Are we the bad guys? But the Nazi, menace does infuse our popular culture, and in a way that makes it a sort of subliminal warning. Edward Peel's got very smoky, burny eyes, hasn't he? And I remember at the time, the director Chris Clough said when the casting was announced, there was always a sort of coldness, a granite-like aspect to his face, and a sort of coldness to his stare that had attracted him to Edward Peel and the casting of Edward Peel, and he was well known for being the chief in Juliet Bravo at this time. Yes, I mean, I'm not sure also how I feel about the fact that Glitz is a lovable rogue, yes, who's won a treasure map in a card game. He's a lovable rogue who has sold his crew. They never quite rationalise this because it wasn't originally Glitz, was it? It was a different character, and they turned it into Glitz, which I think was a great move. But I don't think you can be a lovable rogue and sell your crew to be deep frozen and turned into cadaverous ice mercenaries. Sophie Aldred, a true legend of Doctor Who, a fabulous person, and she'd done a Doctor Who convention at this time. So I'd actually met her on one of 2 Doctor Who conventions I went to. And I remember Tony Selby was there as well, and he signed my thing, and I waited, and then he said, "Have I done you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just waiting for my pen." He said, "Is that literally what you're waiting for?" And I mean, I was only young. I was, "Come on, Mr. Selby, I needed my pen because I didn't want to bump into a Who person in the corridor and not have a pen for them to sign my thing with." So yes, it was literally what I was waiting for. Sabalom Glitz. And of course, it was only a sort of normal biro, and I kept that biro for a very long time because I thought, well, it's been touched by various Doctor Who luminaries. You don't throw things like that away. May not seem important now, but that's what they said about Fury from the Deep. And now look, but that pen has since, I'm afraid, been erased from the Hadoke archives. It's a nice sort of human subplot that poor old Balaj. And the names, yes, but Balaj has this sort of subplot of something has gone on with her and Kane. Although, if I've seen what his hands do to people, I don't quite know what happens if the temperature rises high enough south of the belly button. Anyway, but this is I like this subplot, and I love the way he uses his hands, and the way indeed she does, where she sort of pulls away. Yeah, I'm not sure how that works as a contract, but it's a great image. The image of being burnt by ice, and I'm sure that Glitz's spacecraft have it destroyed. I'm sure that was in the trailer, because I used to tape the trailers at this point on cheap Yashima videotapes that I'd bought that probably disintegrated by now. And I seem to. Oh, and Shirin Taylor, I was delighted, was in this because she was in everything during the 80s, and has a lovely dusky voice. This isn't the sort of character she normally plays. And her and Tony Selby and Tony Asoba are all mates, and they all live quite close to each other. She's done loads of work, Shirin Taylor, and I remember being quite surprised that she was playing a part that was like this, and B, a part that's not actually that huge a part. Although her other Doctor Who part is not huge, because she's one of the two campers who gets absorbed by the augury in the Stones of Blood. And this guy, Ian Mackenzie, I'm sure in the stage he wrote the obituary of the guy that played Hector in The Mythmakers, Alan Hayward. There's a piece of trivia that you will get from no other podcast. A reminder to self: don't just talk about the actors. Well, no, there is an element to this story that I absolutely adore. That I like the plastic bags. That's not the element. But yes, and Shirin Taylor is credited as customer. And I remember when it was announced that she was going to be one of the guest stars, and it said, Patricia Quinn, Balaj, Tony Asoba, Krakauer, Shirin Taylor, customer. I was going, is perhaps that's is it customer? No, it's literally just customer. I think I'd have got my agent to say, can she be called Jane the customer, or as it's film? They're all named after film practitioners or critics, aren't they? Well, film analysts, film theorists. A lot of the characters are named after, aren't they? So perhaps she should have been called Barry Norman. But what I actually like the naming policy in this, because Krakauer and Belage, Podovkin, they have a consistency, even though they come from disparate sources. But they also are really interesting on the mouth and on the ear, and give it its own feeling. And Ace is a refreshing change from Mel, although I'm very well disposed to Bonnie Langford these days, and I was very angry with her as a youth, and I'm because of what she represented. And I think the media and we as a country have been quite beastly to somebody who is a national treasure, who is Bonnie Langford, who is a very, very skilled and able performer. I don't think she's particularly well served by Mel, and certainly her image at the time was of somebody that it was easy to be lazily cruel about. I have less patience for lazy cruelty dispensed at the expense of people whose main sin seems to be to try their very best to entertain us. I think there are people for whom we could reserve our ire who are perhaps more deserving of it. And Bonnie Langford was great in EastEnders, and she's brilliant on stage, and she's very lovely. But certainly Ace is a worthy attempt to sort of modernize the Doctor Who companion. I don't think some of her dialogue has aged. I say it hasn't aged well. I'm not sure it was in particularly fine fettle when it was born, and I think she's better when they try not to ripen her dialogue. Hard to do these sets. I like the lighting in this, actually, and I love that. That's a great moment where Glitz chops the map and, and the Doctor does that. I like little bits like that, but I think you have to be absolutely therefore deadly serious the rest of the time. Yeah, this is she, and she announces herself, doesn't she, by going, "Okay, I've got these." Although that deodorant is very unwieldy, to hold that and spray your armpits at the same time would be very difficult. But it's a great way of announcing that your new companion is not quite like, song and dance lady Bonnie Langford, but is a delinquent arsonist. And it's a credit to Sophie Aldred that she has a likability that cuts through what would otherwise be quite alarming. And I love the scenes in here, and helped very much by am I going to choose? I'm going to choose it for one episode, and I don't know which one. Dominic Lynn's music, which I think is absolutely superb. And I'm not just saying that because he's done the score for one of the other podcasts that I'm doing at the moment called Indefinable Magic, where I muse on arcane things inspired by Doctor Who. This is actually a very nice set, augmented by that photo backdrop, and the fact that there's a bit of colour in the ice. Yeah, I think that works very well. It's a shame nowadays, of course, you'd give everybody, and it wouldn't be so difficult to do. In fact, I think there's a company that do it. You'd give people cold breath, and I think there's a company. I remember once seeing on an episode of Inspector Morse somebody credited as footsteps editor. I think, oh, well, how do you decide that what you want to what you're going to be the doyen of is editing the sound of footsteps? But there's also a company whose main line of business is to add cold breath to scenes that cold breath has not shown up in the movies because it was never there, or the conditions weren't right, or whatever. It's funny, I always thought of Patricia Quinn as being quite tall, I think because Magenta in the Rocky Horror Show is very vampish, but she's not of great stature. But she's got a great presence, and I've never met her. I suspect I'd be terrified of her, but she seems like quite a character. And I think when her and Robert Stevens were together on shoots, it was quite a lark. And Sylvester McCoy gamely and sometimes ill-advisedly doing slidey acting. I admire the intent there. This double-level set is actually excellent, and having the actors positioned up there to give a sense of scale is really good. I really like this main set, actually. I mean, I think it's an impossible task designing an ice centre, and you can see there they've done it with some white curtains. And actually, you can see the edge of the thing that it's hanging off. This is great scene. This is a great scene. And it showcases, why have these people followed Kane? Because he's sort of mesmerizing. And it's played brilliantly, and it's staged brilliantly, and she's great. Sophie Aldred's brilliant in this scene because you can tell she's sort of, you can't even see Mel because she's good enough actress, Sophie Aldred, that it's on her face, and you're seeing everything that's going on there, and you've got Mel sort of as a noise is off, and the music is pulling you in. This is an excellent scene. Freezer, great scene, but. Actually, is she tempted? Because it turns out that freeze, don't freeze. That's great, and he doesn't let up with his villainous acting stuff. So when she's being all sort of thuggish and modern, as it were. He's keeping it entrenched in the sort of, sci-fi theatrics. That was a great scene. That might be my choice. I might save Dominic Glynn's music for a later instalment, but Dominic Glynn's music is excellent in every story that he does. I really like Dominic Glynn's music. I don't know this is one of the great. I know I'm supposed to be being positive throughout this, but this cliffhanger is one of the stupidest moments in the entire history of Doctor Who. And I remember it finishing, because this was really hugely plugged, as much as it ever was at the time. This was the 150th Doctor Who story, so this was quite big news. And I think a few of my friends at school did tune in because there'd been a bit of extra. And the monster looks good in this episode, because we haven't seen how tall he isn't. And that's a great shot of the monster, but could they have dubbed the Doctor saying something like, "I need to get down to that ledge below"? There is no explanation, visual or vocal, as to what the hell he's doing now. So all of my school friends who tuned in to watch the 150th episode of Doctor Who watched the episode that ended with the Doctor actively getting himself into jeopardy. And it's a great shot, and it's well rendered, but it's it's nonsense. This is terrible. I've got to phone. I've got to speak to Andrew Cartmel tomorrow or the day after on a celebratory thing. And I've just finished it by saying that's really silly, but it is really silly. I cannot deny. I have to be positive, but also I'm not mentally ill. I cannot I cannot say that cliffhanger is anything other than utterly baffling. Now I know that what they'd wanted to suggest that was a ledge that he was trying to climb down to. That is not clear. With the best will in the world, that is not clear. Doesn't matter. So doesn't matter, because there was plenty in that to enjoy, and I think Chris Clough was. I think all the directors this year actually work their socks off. Again, I love Paradise Towers, but we'll talk about that when somebody sets it for me, and they haven't yet. And I'm doing an embargo on McCoy stories because everyone was choosing them, and I've only done one Hartnell, and the McCoy era was being eaten up. But Andrew Cartmel, of course, has to choose one that he worked on. Well, he doesn't, but I think we get a better insight. I think we'll hopefully get some bonus content by having direct from Andrew's mouth what it is he loves about this. So I've got to not do the thing where I concentrate on the bit that doesn't work, because there's plenty that did in that. I think I will choose the scene where Kane tries to get Ace to take the coin, because I think I love that set, I love the music, I love the performances, and I think the whole scene is rendered extremely well. So that's what I've chosen. I've no idea what Andrew's chosen, so let's go forward to the future. And I'll chat to Andrew Cartmel. Okay, Andrew, you don't know this. I don't know what you're going to say. I have chosen my favourite things. That is committed to camera. I cannot lie. So I've written them down so that I can't cheat. So when you go, I've chosen the third icicle on the left, I go, yeah, I've got that. So I have chosen my favourite thing from episode 1. So what is your favourite thing from episode 1 of Dragonfire? And why?
Well, I have not broken it down by episode, but I guess if we're going to say episode 1, it's going to have to be Sophie Aldred, because she's going to be in there somewhere, and she makes her first appearance as Ace in episode 1 of Dragonfire, so that's got to be that.
Well, mine sort of includes her, but I chose the coin scene, because I just thought everybody in that scene was firing at all cylinders, from Sophie, who I think acts it brilliantly. You don't actually see Bonnie Langford, but her presence there is really important, sort of trying to, drag Ace to the good side, and Edward Peel is so amazing, of course.
This is Take the King's Shilling scene, basically.
Yeah.
I like Sell Your Soul to the Devil scene, yeah. Eddie Peel as Kane. I loved the bad guys. The thing about, I mentioned the quality of Ian Briggs' writing. I've always praised Ian for the depth and nuance of his characterization. And if you look at this, the bad guys have all got something going on. They're all interesting. They've all got relationships. I mean, Kane has got his dead beloved, right? He's a tragic figure. This is really good stuff.
Well, even the poor old we're going to well, so that is episode 1. There was a little bit of crossover, but we both chose different things, which is fine. That means there's lots to enjoy. Isn't that amazing? I had a guest on this podcast. This is supposed to be a podcast of me just sitting at home watching Doctor Who, but I'm fortunate that I reached out to Andrew and he very kindly decided to bestow his insight and experience of working on this story into this process, which I hope you've therefore benefited from and enjoyed. That was part 1 of Dragonfire. I'm just gonna stick my hand in near the whirring blades of the blender to add some random jeopardy to the end of this particular instalment, and let's hope that I get rescued before perishing because of my own baffling motivation. Anyway, that's the start of the 150th Doctor Who story, the end of part 1 of that. Thanks ever so much to my guest, Andrew Cartmel, who I haven't actually spoken to yet, but for your purposes, it's all rolled into one. Join me for the next instalment. But for now, thank you very much, and good night. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around is Andrew Cartmel, who can be found on Twitter at Andrew Cartmel and also online at venusianfrogbroth.blogspot.com. venusianfrogbroth, all one word, .blogspot.com, where you can find him writing about all sorts of things, and do check out his vinyl detective novels as well. Drinking milkshake with me at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke at the moment are Liam Price, James Miller, David Spofford, Darren Rule, Paul Cornell, David Hughes, Neil Tate, Richard Patey, Jonathan Potter, Nigel Bromley and Nick Tedstone. Thanks to them and to all my patrons. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates. As mentioned, if you want to join those names, they're the latest people to have signed up at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where you get advance releases plus extra and exclusive bonus material. Of course, times are tough, and I understand that not everybody can do the monthly model, but if you want to support these podcasts in a one-off way, you can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. Anything, of course, is gratefully received, but mostly the fact that you listen is ice hot. And if you could give these a 5-star review anywhere that you get your podcast, that really helps too, and it costs you nothing. Live comedy is coming back. My comedy club, XS Malarkey in Manchester, will be back hopefully from July the 13th, live in Manchester. But there is twitch.tv/XS Malarkey that has the online shows until then, plus an archive of what we've been getting up to in lockdown.